Hello and welcome to another episode of the What's This About podcast. This is episode number 2 with my very special guest, Francesca Quintano. She's an artist extraordinaire, specializes in oil painting, but also is multi-dimensional, multi-talented, can do basically anything she wants with art. She's very eccentric, beautiful, and an amazing friend of mine. Has been a mentor to me in some ways with art. So let's get to it, and let's welcome Francesca Quintano. All right.
Okay.
All right.
I feel like I'm just going to laugh.
That's fine.
I'm sorry. Hello.
Hello. Welcome to the What's This About podcast, episode number 2. My very special guest, my dear friend, Francesca Quintano.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm fabulous. How are you?
Good. I'm great. So we'll tell everyone a little bit about you. You're an artist.
Yes.
That's your big thing. That's your big claim to fame.
I am an artist.
That's how I know you.
Yeah.
And you know I'm always going to bring up this story. The first time we ever met.
Oh, God.
You were basically almost naked being body painted at
the Garter by Jules Muck.
Jules Muck. Really? That's
Jules Muck. Muck Rock was the one who was painting me.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
I knew who that is.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Mm-hmm. That's cool. Is she a Venice person too?
Yes. Not originally, but she's been there for like forever. So
there's the Venice crowd is it's very deep rooted Venice.
Very much so.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. All right. Well, and that was my first introduction to you, and then
that's amazing.
Finding out what an eccentric artist you are.
Yeah.
Over the years.
That's very true.
So let's start at the beginning, I guess. I know a little bit about your parents, and I think you get the eccentricness from them.
Oh, absolutely! My whole family is eccentric as fuck.
Yeah, and it's great. It's great. Your parents are sweethearts.
Yeah.
But let's start with you. How you grew up and what influenced you to get into art. Were you always into art? How was your...
Yeah. So I've wanted to be an artist since I was about 6 years old. Okay. Is when I made the decision.
Yeah.
So it was in the first grade yearbook, what do you want to be when you grow up? And everyone's like, an astronaut and a princess. I was like, marine biologist and a painter.
Yeah.
But I've always wanted to be an artist since I was a very little kid. So I think a lot of it has to do with, I was born in Los Angeles. I grew up in Pacific Palisades. Wow. But between birth and maybe 16 years old, I spent half my life overseas. So I'm an Italian citizen, but also my father's a filmmaker, mostly a writer, but he started off in spaghetti westerns. So we spent a lot of time in Spain, and I was in France and Italy and London, Luxembourg, places like that. So I spent half my life in LA, half my life in Europe. And that had a huge influence on me to be constantly surrounded by amazing art and museums. And also that when I was, living on set, I pretty much was the only kid. There weren't any people my age.
Interesting.
It was all adults. And
that makes a lot of sense knowing you. Yeah. To hear that. And because you always hung out with people older than you, more mature.
Yeah.
And I always felt you were kind of more mature than your age. So
yes, a lot of people were shocked that when they first met me, I was in my 20s. Yeah. They're like, what the fuck? They're like, you're still in your 20s and I've known you this long?
Yeah.
So, never being around people my age and being an only child, I was always drawing and entertaining myself that way.
Yeah.
So, and I'm really lucky to have the parents that I do, and my father being a writer, and, his mother was a famous author, and my great-grandfather came to the States for violin. My whole family was, artistic and creative.
Yeah.
So when I said I wanted to be an artist, my family took it very seriously. It wasn't one of those things oh, you should think of something else. It was, okay, this is what you want to do. Yeah. And I remember as a kid, there was one instance, this probably only happened actually once, but it really stuck with me. I wanted to go to a birthday party that I got invited to last minute instead of going to an art class that was on a Saturday. And my dad basically was like, you can go after the class. Like, if you want to be an artist, even at a young age, like, you know, you have to take these things seriously. And it was about having responsibility for myself and what I want to do, even if it's what other parents would probably just see as a hobby. It's like it also instilling that sense of responsibility and commitment to what you want to do. So
that's pretty strong.
Yeah.
I mean, because mine was the opposite. Mine was the first thing you said, where, you know, I was in hardcore punk rock straight edge band at age 17. But there was always that, my sister was like in the marching band and jazz group and all that stuff. And my mom would be like, well, why don't you join, you know, the school band or this, not, like, not taking it seriously.
Yeah.
That I was this 17-year-old kid who wrote songs, wrote lyrics to songs, drove all the way to another town to pick up all his bandmates, drive back to my house, rehearse for a few hours, then drive everybody home and then come home. Like, I was so dedicated, it meant so much to me. And yet she was just like, you know.
That's the problem with, like, a lot of, you know, parents and a lot of just even colleagues and friends and stuff, if it's not in their scope of what they understand. Right.
They don't get it.
Yeah. And I try to be, you know, supportive of people's harebrained ideas, as long as it's like you still have to approach things with like a dedication. I remember when if I would go through funk and I didn't want to make art, and like when I was like preteen, like being
angsty.
Cool. I still was making a lot of art, but if I didn't feel like it, I remember one time I like got in trouble for something, and I never like had time out or shit like that. My parents always like spoke to me about stuff. I remember my mom, she gave me a 4-foot by 6-foot canvas at like 14, and she's like, you have 2 hours to paint this massive
2 hours
still life of an iris.
Wow.
Go. Like, that was my punishment.
Man, they were really grooming you.
So
yeah. Did you ever get resentment over that at all, or
no? It was
you loved
I loved it, and I was just like, nah, fuck that shit. Yeah. But it's still to this day one of my favorite paintings. I mean, it's like, you know, you could see that a young person did it, but it was kind of like my parents are like, grow the fuck up, take shit seriously. So
it's also psychologically kind of funny, because it's like, you go to your room and you do what you love for 2 hours, or else you're not going to be able to screw off and screw up your life. You know, it's like, what? You know, it's like, who does that? That's oh man, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, and you know, not to get into my stuff too much, but like everything I did, like skateboarder, I even got sponsored at one point, you know, and my mom was just like, you need to go to school and you need to do it. And I was like, dude, do you not see the path here? Yeah. You know, it took a long time. At one point, as an adult, she finally said, like, you know, you've chose a very difficult path in life. And I was like, yeah, I know that, but it's what I love, you know. I can't not create art. I can't not create music and, you know, do all these things, you know, that's, it's in your soul.
Yeah, I used to have, you know, before I really considered myself, like if someone's like, what do you do? I'm like, I'm an artist. Yeah. Even though that's all I've done my whole life. Yeah. I would, you know, right out of college, for example, you know, I'd be meeting like my friends from high school and then people they went to school with, and they all went to like, you know, normal schools like University of Michigan or that's the only one I can think of because I don't really know schools, like fancy schools and shit. Yeah. And, people are like, oh, that's so fucking cool that, you know, that's what you do. And I'm looking at them, I'm like, they can pay their phone bill. Like, I couldn't do that, like, 10-something years ago on art. Yeah. And they'd be looking at me like I was, you know, it was amazing what I'm doing. And I'm looking at them, and I'm like, wait, you can get up and, like, go to an like, what is it like to be a grown-up? Like, to me, it was amazing to me. Like, you file your taxes on time type of shit. So to me, it was so intrinsic to the person that I am that the idea of doing anything else was like mind blowing. Like I was like, I can't do anything else. Yeah.
Well, that's like when the band I was in, which you know, Costa Nova.
Fuck yeah.
Good old days. When the band finally ended, you know, I played with friends. I sat in on, played bass for people or whatever, you know, did favors and played a couple acoustic shows on my own and stuff. And then I took a stab at finding some other people, but it just, I was like, this is impossible. Like, screw this. But when I finally said, like, hey, I'm going to take a break, because I felt burnt out.
Yeah.
Because I'd been playing in bands basically my whole life since I was a teenager. And I was like, oh, what is it like to be a normal person? Yeah. Because my whole life was living a double life where you go work a day job to support being able to play in a band and buy your guitar and whatever. Yeah. And just to like come home and not have any responsibility to do anything like that was the weirdest thing to me. Yeah. And I just focused on my job for a while and I was like, this is so weird. I come home and I'll go to the gym or, like it's odd to me but I guess if you're doing what you love as a job, then that's fine. Because then you're like, hey, I have all this extra time outside exactly. of that. But
I don't think most people are doing what they love, though.
No, I agree. I mean, I have a day job, and I like it. It supports me to be able to do what I want to do, but it's not... I don't love it. It's not what I want to be doing. Yeah. So that's where I'm pushing in my life now, to keep pushing for that transition to where I can just jump off the cliff. And,
that jump is very scary.
Yeah, of course, And
been there.
In some ways I've done it, several times, but I basically, I've lived my life doing it, but I want to form my own life that is exactly what I want. So that's my transition. But enough about me. Let's get back to you. So, all right. So you were definitely influenced by your parents. Yes. They were supportive. Yes. That's amazing. Living in Europe part of the time, like just seeing the architecture even, it was probably incredible as a kid. Yeah. I was always a fan of architecture. But then... You stabilized here in LA in Venice, I assume, or the Palisades?
Yeah, I was in the Palisades for a few more years once we finally came back, and then I went to college. I did my freshman year at Tufts through School Museum of Fine Arts, and I was like 16, 17 years old when I went to college.
You went early, yeah.
I was super young, no dorms, put in an apartment by myself. The average freshman age was 26.
Wow.
So I was like, whoa.
You're like the Unabomber, super intelligent and 2 years early in college. That's kind of what screwed him up. So it's a good thing you got past the Unabomber phase.
Yes, I definitely, it's questionable sometimes. But so... I did that, and then I came back. It was too much. Yeah. The program I went into was amazing, but also was pass fail, and going from a highly academic high school in Los Angeles, very prolific high school, to that. I was like, what is going on? And that was a struggle for me, and I actually wanted more structure. Yeah. And also I was dating a guy who was super shitty at the time and threatened to kill me. So that had part of the reason I was like, screw this town. So then I transferred to Otis College of Art and Design. So and that's when my family moved to Venice, and they've been there ever since. So,
wow. Yeah. And how long were you in Otis?
3 years.
3 years.
Yeah.
And I think I went to... I don't know if it was when you were still in Otis, but I remember going to some art thing you had.
I think it was my senior thesis show.
It was like a 2-floored kind of...
Yeah, that was my senior thesis show.
Yeah, I remember being there. That was, that's crazy.
That was a long time ago.
Yeah. Well, so my first recollection of your art, because you mostly paint in oils, correct? Yeah. And my first recollection is the photos that your mom took in the swimming pool, and then you recreated these really dreamy kind of abstract-y versions of the photos, which are amazing, and they're pretty big, right?
Yeah, I typically, the smallest I would go would be 4 feet by 5 feet.
Yeah. The smallest you would go. Most people were like, how do you cover that much? I'm like, dude, for me, it's the same thing. The bigger, the better. Yeah. It's funner,
Oh, the smaller it is, the more stressed out I am. Yeah.
Well, what's incredible? So Salvador Dali, I always loved his stuff. And it was just like, wow, this is so crazy, Surrealism to me is really cool. And I went to an amazing exhibit in Philadelphia, and it was mind-blowing. But one of the things that blew my mind was some of those paintings are tiny. And
Really?
And I was like, how could you do this kind of detail on?
Don't think I've ever really seen much of his stuff in person.
Oh my God! Yeah, some are like some of the ones that with the most detail are really small, and
wow,
like maybe like this big, and I was like, that's insane. Like, how do you paint that kind of detail through that? You know, because you would figure a bigger scape, you just could see it broader and have.
And it's also
idea.
kind of, this is like an interesting side note, but kind of when you look at certain pieces of art and you've seen them like in print or online for such a long time, and the emotional impact of it, you also like, this has got to be a huge piece, the emotional impact. And there's a random study that was done of Picasso's Battle of Guernica, and that painting is done in black and white. Yeah. But because it's so emotionally drawn and so powerful, some scientists did, or neuroscientists did a little study where they showed people this piece for like, a small period, like maybe a couple minutes, let them look at it. Right. And then an hour later was like, can you describe this? And everyone described it with having lots of color in it and having lots of red in it because of the emotional implications of it. Yeah. So.
See, that's where I think when you read beyond the backstories to all this stuff, then you really understand it, it has a bigger impact. Yeah. And that's where my friend Roy, he told me, oh, you got to create your own narrative. Yeah. And I was like, okay, and I understood where my paintings were coming from, but then once he solidified that more in my head, I was able to tell my story better. Yeah. So like Rothko is a great example of that.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, like I always thought like, oh, they're cool. But then when I read the background of them, I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing,
So that's funny you bring that up. That's always been something that I've kind of struggled with a bit, not with my personal work, but with in the appreciation of art. In that I had an experience with, a couple boyfriends ago where we went and saw Yves Klein. And he, famously paints everything blue. He'd paint women blue, have them print their bodies on canvas and everything. And I was really excited to see this. Yeah. And, he came up with this blue pigment that he would use. And my ex was like, I could fucking do this. And I was like, yeah, but I mean, and that was like a huge, like, come to Jesus moment for me. I was like, well, that's, what makes a true masterpiece then? Like, to me, this is amazing because I know the history of where it came from, that it was a reaction to the art that was being made at the time. And it was absolutely life-changing, the art that he was making, and revolutionary. But the reason that I appreciated it is because I had that context and I went to school to study this and I knew this. So that's something I'm like, I kind of grapple with that if it can be visually appealing, I want basically really informed where my art would go because I wanted somebody who like doesn't have any education on art, had never gone to a museum in their life to see my stuff and really love it. Yeah. But then an art historian and someone who studied theory can also get an external and extra appreciation of it. So that kind of made me, speaking of like creating your own narrative, it really made me, because I typically stayed away from dating artists. Yeah. Partially because of my...
Was he an artist?
No. Okay. He was not. But so I, dating someone who had nothing to do with my field, and that's always typically what I've done. Right. That kind of also, gave me a look into the lay person's eyes.
Yeah. Well, I think there is two sides to viewing art, like you're saying, knowing the history and the context and the time and the impact it had and all that stuff. And then opposed to just seeing it and thinking, oh, this looks cool. Or, so I posted one of my pieces on my Instagram, and this woman's comment was, oh, my 5-year-old can do that. Yeah. And you know what my reply was? Like, yes, exactly. Yeah. And you know why? Because a 5-year-old's mind is so pure that as an adult, if you can get back to that purity,
absolutely,
you're doing something that just is you're going deep in your soul.
Yeah, even like Picasso said, he spent his whole childhood learning how to paint like an adult, and his adulthood to try to paint like a child again.
Yes, exactly. There you go.
Because you go through post-childhood, all well, this needs to look this and this way. So
the guitarist John Frusciante from the Chili Peppers, like, he was so trained that when he tried to expand outside the box, he tried to unlearn and dumb down what he was doing, and I guess that's not the best term to use, but he was trying to like just not follow all the rules. And I think it's incredibly important. Like, I can always tell when somebody is painting something and it's really loose and it's kind of deconstructed. You can still tell who knows like the human form, like who studied figure drawing, who knows anatomy and bones, versus someone who, like Egon Schiele is a perfect example of that. Like his stuff is, people are elongated and it's not anatomically perfectly correct, but you can see the difference between, he knows there's a muscle there and he knows there's some, whereas someone who just skipped all those steps to go. So even if this woman's saying like my 5-year-old could do that, I'd be like, yeah, but does he have the wherewithal to mix these colors and no color theory to put these next to each other? And it's like me, I've always been like, as a guitarist, I was just not trained. I just learned self-taught, and then I would always say Jimi Hendrix was self-taught, and so
the first person who played the guitar was self-taught.
Exactly. So, but I approached, and basically as a musician, I wanted to create music, create a sound that I could hear, or that I wanted to hear that didn't exist, and that was my push. And that, because being original has always been something for me, whether it was when I was doing graffiti, a skateboarder, a musician, and now as an artist. And you take little bits and pieces of stuff you admire, but then you have to be able to find yourself within all that. You
have to filter it through your own eyes and soul and all that,
and emotion and everything. So so to that point, throwing it back, playing tennis here, like interview tennis. But so how did you, when you first started painting, were you following all the classically trained rules and stuff, or when did you finally hit that point where you felt like, all right, this is a Francesca Quintano?
So I think, there was a painting that I did, I think, when I was a freshman in high school. And I had gone to see a show at LACMA that was basically like abstract expressionism, but it was a lot of like Jasper Johns and what the fuck else was there? And also I think there was a show that was Lucian Freud was going on at the same time, and Basquiat, like all in that year. I saw those 3 shows. And that was when I think I really, really, really seriously was like, oh my God, this is absolutely what I want to do. Because it also showed like you can take, things don't need to look like a photograph. Which is also what I struggled with in college a bit as well.
Being perfect.
Especially because like I'm a shit show 99% of the time in my life, but like in art, I am very much a perfectionist. Or not a shit show, I'll say I don't really care at all. But I really care when it comes to art. I have like methods to things. So seeing that like very much made me want to take my own imagery and make it my own. So that being said, I did a painting my freshman year of high school, and I won. There was like a Scholastic award, something,
right?
And I won a Scholastic Gold Key for it. But I took I had an SX70 Polaroid camera that I bought at the Santa Monica Flea Market.
Right.
Looked super cool. It was like flattened out, leather bound. You can control the contrast and kind of like the f-stop a little bit.
Yeah.
And I was taking lots of pictures, and I took a picture of my dad, and it was incredibly moody. And my father has a very expressive face, and it came out in these very intense red colors.
Right.
So I decided to take that image and paint it.
Was he angry?
No, my father, he doesn't like really having his picture taken, but he always does this like lifting his eyebrow look.
Right.
And it basically looks like any character in a spaghetti western. Like that's the spaghetti western villain. Like that's the face my dad makes.
Yeah.
So I took that and I painted it, and that was when I first really, really seriously got into oils and kind of how I apply paint, how I mix the color, how I blend it, and I won a first place prize for that painting.
Wow.
And so that is kind of where my interest in, either taking my own photographs or taking photographs that my mother has taken and expressing it through paint. So it was like a double curation process. Like I would think about what kind of images I would look for. I'd go through photos that I took or photos my mother took, and then I'd curate which ones were interesting to me.
Right.
And move on from that. So that's kind of when I first really...
Yeah, because that's your own vision. You had a vision, like a pretty strong vision. That's awesome. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it's funny because when you get there,
Oh, yeah.
Like, when I was younger and I was writing songs, I was like, is this good? Like, I couldn't tell.
Yeah.
And then when we played shows and the reaction, I was like, oh, wow, people really like this,
I think it took, like, here's a gold key. And I'm like, oh, dang. I think I'm onto something.
That's hilarious. But, yeah, it's funny. Yeah, I mean, as I got older and... Like, once I knew I was creating something I loved, nothing else mattered. Like, I didn't care about anyone else's opinion, because people go, well, it's kind of cool. I'd be like, I don't care. I love it, like, it's me.
Yeah.
And, that's another thing, because the show that we did together, which we'll talk more about, I was finally a time where I could see a group of my paintings together. And it felt so good because you could see, you could see all the work as a body of work.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that shows growth. That shows vision. That shows, you've kind of find a place.
Yeah, I think that's why also I did those paintings of people submerged underwater. So that started from painting from images my mother took throughout my childhood to then me creating my own images and painting from them. So then having a control over it and creating what I wanted to see and then translating it into paint. But
which is really cool because then there's like a family lineage in there.
Oh yeah.
But
I got obsessed with those paintings. Like I did that for maybe like 7 years, those types of paintings. Yeah. And it was like an itch that I couldn't quite reach.
Right.
And then I remember I still have the painting where I was doing it, and I had, like 25 something paintings in oil. Some of them were, 5 feet by 10 feet. They were huge, done in oils and very detailed.
Right.
And seeing them all together, like, I was like, I'm a real artist. Because, I was like probably 17 to... 17 to like mid 20s, late 20s when I was doing these paintings, and seeing it as this body made me feel like, I'm a real artist because I have all of this together. And then I kind of painted myself into a corner, and I'm like, if I do anything else, is anyone going to know it's me? And to this day, people still will send me images and they're like, is this you? And I'm like, no. But I remember I was doing this one painting, and it was where I took that one pattern of fabric that I would paint it obsessively. And halfway through the painting, I was just looking at it, and I was like, wow, this is fucking boring. And halfway through the painting, and I've never not finished a painting, I stopped the painting, and I still have it, like, halfway unfinished. I think I'm going to keep it forever because it was such a huge moment for me. Because, if I start a painting, I don't go on anything else until I finish that painting. Like, I'm very OCD like that.
See, that's, what's interesting about that, too, is that you're an oil painter.
Yeah.
And oil paint takes so long to dry that for you not to be working on several at one time.
Yeah.
But I understand, like, the focus is there.
Yeah. I mean, I can do, like, 2 or 3 paintings at the same time.
Right.
But I'm consistently, like, even in one day, going to all 3 of them.
Yeah.
But I never put it to the side for a bit.
Yeah.
So for me to just be looking at this painting, I think I was even, like, painting it for a couple hours that day. And I just sat down in my thinking chair.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is fucking stupid. I don't want to do this anymore. It just, like, stopped right there.
And was that like a break out of the box, like, now I'm gonna think outside the box type moment?
That was like I'm ready to move on. This feels great. Yeah. Also, what the hell am I gonna do?
Yeah. Oh.
It was like kind of like a mini existential crisis.
Yeah.
Actually, a major one.
That's exciting, though.
Yeah, it was exciting.
Growth is uncomfortable sometimes.
It's super uncomfortable sometimes.
It's pretty amazing once you get there and you're, like, standing on top of a rock. Yeah.
And also part of the reason I stopped doing those is that I forgot who taught me this phrase, but I was noodling, which is where you just get so invested in something and you paint and you use, like, a small brush and you're just like being super perfect. I was just like, this is...
It's like you're micromanaging your art.
Yes. I was like, this is no longer... I created a system and I was like a dictator of my own little world. Wow. And my little world was painting. That's and I was deep. Becoming an evil dictator. Yeah. And I was that dictator who's like, I don't want to dictate anymore. This is not fulfilling in life. So I stopped doing it. And then I was kind of messing around and thinking about what I wanted to do. And this is also when I started to kind of paint palm trees a little bit. And another reason why I ended like a whole era of doing paintings is I would have shows and people were blown away by my art and people were like, oh my God, this is the best art I've ever seen. Nobody would buy it.
Yeah. Well,
no one was, also it's massive, which is not the greatest, but a lot of comments I got basically was like, it would be perfect if I had like a super big white house and all white walls and like white furniture. It just doesn't. I'm a maximalist painter, so it wouldn't go with someone's couch. I'll put it that way. So after that, I was like, what the fuck am I gonna paint?
Well, people that buy art are people with money. Yeah. And or not just art, but the people that'll buy something like of your quality, that size. Yeah. You deserve to have a high ticket on that, and when I've noticed this, and you can kind of equate this to music too, where it's like, you get all your friends out, but then you need to start getting some real people that like your music out. The art is like that with, we all go support each other. Yeah. But we all don't have that kind of money per se. So it's like, you just need, I think with you especially, you just need the right person to go, oh my God, we get this. Yeah. And part of that too, I think, is, just finding your audience. I've heard that phrase used. Yeah. And that's kind of also why I changed my art a little bit. So, well, one question on the swimming pool photos. You were one of those photos, weren't you? So the photos my mother took, I was in a lot of them. All of the ones that I took, they're all self-portraits. Oh, okay. Yeah, so they're all me. All right. Wait, and you took self-portraits of yourself underwater? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I always thought all those were your mother's that she took. No. Oh, interesting. Yeah. The ones that were more like with the floating fabric and the neckline, those were self-portraits taken like selfie style. Okay. Underwater. Right. Super high tech. So that actually is second stage, because the first stage was the ones your moms did. And then the second stage is you going, oh, I have more interest. So you were already thinking out the box even when you took those. Yeah. And then you just hit that breaking point where you're like, I can't do these anymore. Yeah. I was like, how many times am I going to do this to myself? Right. So when I, right out of college, I had a show at Bergamo Station. And I was the youngest person in history to have a show there. Wow. Which was like, is that still there? Is that still standing?
The gallery?
No,
that record? Oh, I have no idea. Probably not. It's probably like a 5-year-old.
We should go there one day for one of the, like how they have the big Saturdays.
Yeah.
And just be like, she's the youngest person to ever have an art show here.
They're like, she looks pretty old. Goodbye. Yeah. But I sold all the work in that pretty much. Or was it all the work? It was like 70% of the work.
Wow.
And it was like sold to a German plastic surgeon that flew in. Yeah. So it was that crowd. But I think that because of my age and me not necessarily having my foot in the door in terms of networking, like myself, not just my art. So that was kind of like finding the audience thing. But so after I started doing that, I was like, how do I not need to constantly be in a gallery to be selling work? Yeah. And so I thought about doing smaller stuff, and I was just like, my stuff, I think the audience, exactly, like the audience was kind of like a higher, ticketed type person, but I wanted to be able to also access like, my immediate surroundings of the art scene, and so I could be relevant as a person. And I was having like a bitchy moment. I was like, well, I mean, what would rich white girls in Venice buy? So I started painting palm trees on pink backgrounds.
Wow. Okay.
And also part of the reason I did that was I did it really drippy, and it was all glazing and loosen myself up. It basically was, just
breaking
to
some
me,
of your own rules.
It was like sketching with paint. Yeah. Sold 5 paintings in 1 month, and I was like, God damn it, I knew it. Yeah.
But so consciously, what brought you to the palm trees? Like, did you want to paint that? Or were you just trying different avenues?
I was just trying different avenues. Yeah. I literally was like, what would insecure white people buy? Yeah. And I was right.
I hope none of those people are listening. But they're like, that son of a bitch.
They're like, I know that painting.
She messed with us.
But in doing that, though, in doing it as a kind of like sticking my middle finger up to people, which is like, it was the prettiest way to do that because they're so lovely. Just loosening myself up and being not overpainting and not overthinking. I was able to. I started collaborating with one of my friends, and she does this kind of very font work where she'll create font from mirroring words, and we kind of layered stuff. And I actually really grew to love doing these.
She was the one that you did the
Diana
mural
Ralph.
with, right?
Yeah, we did that big mural with. And
that was cool.
Yeah, so me having this crisis and being like, I just want to make money, and being pissed off at people actually turned into me, thinking on it and really researching images and what I loved and what I cared about and what visually is stimulating, and also changing the way I physically painted things was a huge deal for me. And that it kind of was like I love metaphors. I'm all about these metaphors today. Like, your knuckles are really tight for a long time, and then you finally crack them, and you're like, oh, I can move my fingers. That's.
How was it collaborating? Was it uncomfortable at first, or was it easy because you liked her art?
I mean, I'm obsessed with her, for one.
Okay, then that's...
And in college, we actually, our senior year, we had a studio right across from each other. And she's one of my best friends. But collaborating with her was really nice because the work that she was doing at the time was very font-based and line work, and she was creating a set of rules for herself and systems, which is something that I think she and I really have in common, is creating these systems of setting rules for yourself. Like, I like to kind of play around with creating this hierarchy for myself, and then where I can express and grow within that set of rules I create. So because I was doing such organic, loose work, and her work was very different, it caused this beautiful layering effect where the negative space of her lettering, I could have something that's peeking through, and I was doing stuff that was very thin and transparent. So it kind of was it was really nice. I enjoyed it.
There was no moment of like, why are you putting that font over that palm tree?
No, not at all.
No, that's great. That's great.
Yeah.
I don't think... I don't know.
I don't know if I could do it with anybody else, though.
Yeah. Oh, thanks.
I mean,
no, I'm
with
just
you,
kidding.
obviously, duh.
No, I don't think I've ever I think the closest, like, collaborating is, like, doing graffiti pieces with your friends, but...
I don't think I could do that.
Yeah, I don't think...
Because graffiti, I feel like when
it's still separate, though. Like, you're painting on the same wall, and maybe there's some kind
okay, because if someone, like, sprayed over I'd be like, motherfucker. If you touch the corner of my thing...
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You know? Well, there's the famous, like, you know, Basquiat, Warhol...
Yeah.
Collaborate. And in the movie, you know, he's like, oh, why are you painting there? You know, kind of thing.
Yeah. I feel like I'd have to go ahead of time. And this is a word I use a lot when I talk about art, a moment. Yeah. Be like, don't touch that moment right there.
Yeah.
That's a pretty moment.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you find stuff that you really like, and it's like, oh, you don't want to touch it.
Yeah.
Even when you're painting on your own paintings.
Yeah.
You know, you find stuff and you're like, oh, that's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
You know?
I guess I still partially collaborate a bit because, like, my best friend Casey, who you know, and Diana are the two people who I'll be working on something.
Yeah.
And even though I have all the confidence in the world with my stuff, I've been living with it for a long time. So it's kind of nice that it's just a sounding board. I'll send a picture and be like, do I touch this?
Yeah.
And they're like, no. I'm like, okay. Just making sure.
That's a lot of trust.
Yeah. They're the two people I trust. So.
Well, because one of my friends, she bought one of my pieces of art, and then she actually saw that the other day, like a piece of it, and she's like, I love this, I want this. And then I said, well, it's not done yet. I just kind of put up a piece, and I said, here's the whole painting.
Yeah.
And she's like, oh my God, I really love this. And I'm like, so then
you're like, damn it, do I stop and sell it? Or
yeah, it's like, but
because if you want to see it go a certain place, like, you can't recreate this.
Right, exactly.
And like
there's only a photo.
Yeah. Also, like, do you want to?
Yeah, I'm like, hey, give it back so I can finish it, you know, and like a year from now. No, so I there's still places I want to go with it. So.
That's a struggle.
Yeah, but that's people ask me that question too, because so, like, time-wise painting, basically, like, so I tend to work more with, like, acrylics, spray paint markers, and then some oils. And it's mostly paintings were done in one sitting. Yeah. And it was just all this emotion going, whoosh, you know? And then more lately, like a piece like this, I'll take my time. Yeah. You know, because I'm finding because it's kind of the same thing with music. Like, as a guitarist, well, we didn't have a permanent bass player at first, so I was overplaying to fill up all this space. Yeah. But I was also overplaying because if you give me a basic rhythm, I'll come up with like 7 different ideas with 5 different delay pedals and all these things, and a lick here, and, you know, just a groove here.
Lick and a groove. Yeah. I'm sorry. I know nothing about music, so it's funny to me.
Well, anyways, but yeah. So, and then the paintings. I felt like I was kind of doing the same thing where I wasn't leaving space and things like that. And then I'd find stuff where stuff would peek through. And I was like, oh, look at this, you know, this area, like this is different. So then I started working with breaking it up more and not having to fill every inch of the canvas, you know? And that's, you know, that's all growth, you know, but, so like with you saying, like, you were doing the palm trees and they were more loose and all that stuff, even though you were doing for those insecure white women of Venice, just to make some cash, it's still part of your growth.
Yeah, absolutely.
You still learned from it all.
And I only did that for like maybe a year and a half, and then
you started doing some skulls too.
Yeah, so now I'm very much,
What inspired the skulls?
I'm a spooky bitch. Nah. No, I actually wanted to I started doing skulls. So a lot of the skulls I actually do in acrylic. I'm very uncomfortable with acrylic because I'm used to being able to really control everything. Acrylic, to me, you cannot control. And I know most people would say, oil you can't control, but like, oil's my bitch. Like, I've been working with that shit for 20-something years. Yeah. It's what I know. Yeah. Acrylic, I do anxiety painting with acrylic. I'm like, it's about to dry. Like, I get like, but I wanted to really practice with acrylic. I also I wanted to start doing more still life stuff. And to me, the skull is kind of like the ultimate classic still life. So I'm really interested in Dutch golden era paintings, which is, a lot of like flowers and fruit. And, specifically they would do kind of memento mori paintings. There'd be skulls and decaying fruit and stuff like that. Yeah. Just kind of as a practice for shading, like just shading. It's one of the best things to do. So it's a still life that's great with shading, and it's good acrylic practice. And I'm also... still doing a lot of rainforest type stuff.
Yeah, those are amazing.
Yeah, so the body of work I'm starting right now, I'll tell you about in a minute. But so just kind of after all of that, I went back to more detailed painting. I'm very but I'm mixing structure with looseness. But it's...
Where'd you get the idea for the rainforest?
So
what inspired that?
I actually was watching Fern Gully one night. Oh, where did that... I don't... honestly, I think because I've always been a maximalist painter and I use lots of color, I wanted to do something that kind of in the process of it was a journey. So my... I think will explain a lot about why my art is what it is. So the process of painting for me, 90% of it is setting up the image I'm going to paint. So for me, I'm not an emotional painter at all. I'm a very strict, get the image on. So what I do is I have periods of research, and that's the very emotional part for me. Interesting. I'll be inspired by something, and then I think, you know what it was? Is I went on a trip to Puerto Vallarta, and I was going through the rainforest there and taking all these beautiful images and kind of just thinking about, it's going to sound super cheesy, but the planet as a whole and what makes this place beautiful, and it's nature and it also is this very foreboding thing. It's terrifying and it's gorgeous and it's something we have to protect but can consume us at the same time. And I think just that feeling of being incredibly small in the scheme of things that's something for me. And I also was interested in looking at an image that top to bottom, side to side is all engrossing of something. And you're like, holy shit. So for me, I do a lot of research, and will have one thing that inspires me, and it's the closest thing I would ever say to having a religious experience or an out of body experience is the second I'm bing, have an idea. It's a flood of my brain feels like it's on fire and lighting up.
Because there's so much.
There's so much. I'm just holy shit. Yeah. So then I typically will get online and get books, and I have to do it right that I'll be up for hours and I'll be researching images, looking at books, looking up symbolism, and I typically write notes. So my stuff starts out actually being written down, and I'll write down everything I want to do and bullet points of everything I want to reference, and I have an image pop in my head. So then I have that. And then I kind of break it down into, okay, let's say I want to have a body of 9 pieces. So I can take all these images and I can start to almost like a tree. So it starts with one hectic thing, like a family tree almost. And then it breaks down into what I want to put where.
Right. But that's all you're talking about, the one painting, or are you talking
I'm talking about
a whole bunch of paintings?
Yeah. So I'll have an idea. I'll be holy shit, this is what I want to research and think about. So then I have my general thing I want to explore, my idea I want to explore. And then I break it down into actual themes of what I want to kind of touch on in each image. And then I spend forever. I basically Photoshop together and create my own images. So I will create a rainforest out of 30 different images of rainforest. Wow. It's it's computer collaging basically, but I will stitch together and create a rainforest that I want to see. And it's
Right.
like I sometimes use up to like 75 layers in Photoshop to manipulate it and make this perfect image.
Yeah.
And then once I do that, once all that research has been put in, all that everything, all the emotion, then it's like, okay, go.
See, okay, there's a lot to digest here.
I know, I just went on such a rampage.
No, but I mean, you had to, because, okay, so first of all, going back when you were in Puerto Vallarta and you were in the jungle, and then you mentioned you were taking photographs.
Yeah.
So right off the bat, there's photographs that connect to your art again, which is interesting.
Everything, I'm very photographic. Yeah.
And then also the family tree thing, it's like you're not just approaching one painting.
No.
Your super mind is like, you're like, you have this whole, it's like you're already seeing the whole vast, huge picture of it all, the vision, which is amazing. And then to hear the process of you creating the Photoshop and and the research and then the Photoshop, like, this is a story that needs to be told for your art, Like, you need a solo show where this story is told. And I don't even think this needs to be a story that's told, like, on a piece on a wall, like a 8.5 by 11 piece of paper. That too, sure. But, and even with each painting, but I think there should be a solo show for you with this body of work, and then there should be a conversation. Like,
I actually saw a Murakami show, and the part that was the most interesting to me was all of his sketches and notes and like his tiny drawings that were in the entrance that showed his planning for his stuff. To me, I was like,
interesting. Wow.
So
see, I don't really do that with abstract.
Yeah.
Like, for me, it comes from meditation, and then I, like, it's sent to me, I receive it and I see it, and then I create on that vision, and then the colors come to me and I figure out, all right, these colors are going to go here, and this.
A lot of people are surprised when they find out, they're like, whoa.
It's
or like
a big process.
Literature, it has a huge part of my work, actually. Like John Milton's Paradise Lost, when, you're reading a story about, there's a scene in it basically where Lucifer's floating in a lake of fire and he's contemplating his loneliness. That, or Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness. And that also had a lot to do with, so those kind of, I think actually those two pieces of literature had a lot to do, like, I'm very like thought-based and literature-based and research-based, and so that has a lot to do with all of that. So actually the body of work I'm doing right now, I think, is the culmination and perfect example of this kind of process that I do. I'm basically recreating in my own way classic religious paintings. So I was raised Catholic and growing up in Europe.
Surprise.
I know, right? Yeah. Growing up in Europe, I'm constantly surrounded by cathedrals and religious art. So I, having had that be kind of a backbone of my life, I'm taking like Caravaggio, Titian's, Rubens paintings of classic religious scenes and dissecting them and recreating them where instead of having human flesh figures, they're replaced by skeletons, and instead of having these like very lush religious kind of backgrounds, they're in a very intense rainforest. Right. And I had a carpenter make me actual altar pieces, like triptych altar pieces. So I have an altar that's about 7 feet tall, 9 feet wide, on hinges, and it's top to bottom rainforest, and I'm doing Cain and Abel right now. And I went to Italy last summer and did the art tours and stuff like that, and I really like the religious influenced art because it's from a different time period, like a long time ago, but there's so many different cool aspects to a lot of it. The symbolism is bananas. Yeah, it's nuts. And then you read the little stories and you're like, oh, but
I like a lot of the gold and the crowns and like.
Oh, I'm gold leafing this thing.
Yeah, see that you have to. You have to.
I'm gold leafing the sides of it. I'm like, nice. No doubt about it.
Well, and the other thing I loved was the huge gold frames.
Yeah.
And I have a goal to paint something like that and then put it in with a huge wooden gold frame and like, you know, but that's down the road, I guess. You know, that's another vision that I still have to like really formulate and really see the full vision. But we really need to do a show with you where it's because that body of work and those that's going to have such an impact. Yeah.
Actually, I have a meeting next week.
Good.
With someone about it.
Good. Yeah.
I had a thought of working with this guy who owns a nursery, and we were going to create a living rainforest and then put my pieces like up in it. But yeah, it's just that so I studied neuroscience for a bit in college, and I actually used to teach neuroscience to gifted kids in middle school. I'd create neuroscience programs for them. And I think kind of that intensity of what the brain does and how, you know, it all goes back to the tree, basically, kind of. You know, your neurons and your dendrites are like trees, and every time you make a new connection, they connect to a different tree, and it's like a root system. And so that, and, you know, studying and knowledge and all the literature I'm interested in, nature is always a character in it itself. To me, it's a living character, and that's translated visually into my art. So it's
well, and that's pretty intense because we're a part of nature. And so you're connecting everything back to the beginning too. Through your art, which the religious aspect of it is
it's fascinating. I'm almost at a loss for words to talk about it because my brain feels like it's going to explode, like the amount of ideas. And like, if you look at my phone, I look like a religious fanatic. It's like or like a murderer. It's like screenshots of skulls, and then like all these religious paintings, and notes about symbolism. Like one fascinating thing for me, and this also ties back to the way I grew up. So there's a church in France where they have Mary Magdalene's skull, supposedly.
Wow.
I went to that church. I remember seeing that shit when I was like 9 years old. And that's a heavy thing to be like, here's a skull. It's like surrounded by glass and like gold and fancy stuff. So I have an image of Mary Magdalene that I want to paint. And classically in paintings, Mary Magdalene is always painted and there'll be a skull hiding somewhere because it is a reference to the fact that they actually believe that they have her skull. Like stuff like that, or that she's always holding a quill, and they're just these hidden visual clues. And like, that's fascinating to me.
No, that's deep. That's cool. Yeah, I can't wait to see all this.
I can't wait to actually finish one. I haven't had time to actually be in my studio at all, so, you know.
How, like, the jungle painting, like one of the jungle paintings, like, how long did that take to paint?
I have one that's 5 feet tall, 15 feet wide. It's broken up into 3... Is it 15 feet?
Yeah.
Wait, no. 4 feet tall, 15 feet wide.
Is it one of the ones from the show?
Yes. Okay. So that one, for example. And I sold 10 feet of it, and I have one of them, like, separate right now. But he was the guy that, like, didn't really fit in. That took a very long time, actually a few years.
Really?
Because I did one part of it when I was in a relationship for a long time, and then ended that relationship, and that was a very, very difficult time for me.
And that's where the rainbow came in.
Yeah, post-relationship is when I was like, ta-da! Life.
I remember this conversation.
But, you know, it really depends because, for example, the piece that I'm working on right now, the Cain and Abel one, because I have different types of way that I'm applying the paint in it, some parts are very, photorealist and they're very rendered, and other parts are super loose. So I'm kind of navigating that, but also just, because I paint murals all the time, I'm like, I haven't been in my studio. So, but this piece will probably take me, like a couple months to do. And when I go and paint, I'll paint for like 6-7 hours at a time. So
yeah. That's it's interesting because I've hit like probably, I mean, in one sitting I've probably spent like 3 to 4 hours or so. And it's, you know, I know as a musician and as an artist, like that's your zen. That's your inner peace when you're doing that. And it's when I was in the band, the guys called it Andyland because we would finish a jam, like it's 25-minute jam or something, 27-minute jam. And then I'd be sitting there for the next 5 minutes just in my head staring at my guitar pedals, making notes like you're saying in this little book, in my notebook. And then I would look up and I go, hey, we should play this and put this with this and this. And they'd all look at me and start laughing. And they go, oh, yeah, we've been talking about that for the past few minutes. You've just been in Andyland over there, you know. But they encouraged it because they knew I was like structuring and formulating all these visions of the sound and what we were going to do.
So you're doing exactly like what I do for painting, but you do it with music. Right.
So now that's where I'm trying to transition over, you know, and I like a lot of the work I've done over the past several years. I really love it.
But there's no right or wrong. Like if it just comes from you intrinsically, then you don't need to think about it, which is lovely.
Right. But there's it's like I said, mine mostly comes from meditation and just seeing these visions of stuff. But an abstract, I think, right now, at least, is what I do mostly. It fits me because it's just I've always been outside the box, tried to push and be different and all that stuff, and so it fits my personality and what I've always thought of, you know, in terms of creative wise. But I mean, the process is to hear your process is pretty amazing. I mean, that's it's inspiring.
Thanks. Yeah. Like even when I physically go in to paint, I have my thinking chair that I told you about.
Your thinking chair?
My thinking chair.
Yeah.
And I sit in the chair and I literally will stare at my painting for 30 minutes, and that's when I meditate. I'm not even having any thoughts. I'm just looking at it.
Right.
And almost getting the energy because I know that I'm about to do some shit that's exhausting.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But I have, I get very OCD, which is why I'm a hectic-ass person. I'm eccentric as hell. So the fact that I'm very OCD when I do things, people are like, hot damn. I always have to have my palette to the right of me. I have to have things perfectly placed. Wow. I lay the paint out in the same way. And it's not even, light to dark. It's just, what I've been doing.
Sense to you.
Exactly. Yeah. I pre-mix all of my colors. Pre-mix it. I'll have 50 different. That's a blatant lie. Not 50. 7 different greens.
Whoa, that's a huge jump there.
I was like, whoa, that's a lie.
I have 50. I mean 7.
I'll have 7 different greens. Yeah. I've set everything out. I have everything that I need. I have all 10 of my beverages. That's not a lie. I do have 10 beverages. Jeez. I'm a thirsty bitch. And, I will either, it depends what I'm doing, I'll either what part I'm working, either standing or sitting. And after so I have everything out, so I don't have to think about anything when I'm painting. I just have to do it. Yeah. And then I recycle all my paint, so then I put everything in salsa cups and I put it in the fridge so that I have the mother color that I just keep adding to.
Yeah.
I'm a crazy person when it comes to that.
You're just, everybody has their process. And
yes.
If it was 50, I would say here's the number of a good therapist, Cause
I typically will have, for only painting what most people would say are 3 colors. Right. It's brown, green, and actually that's it right now. 2 colors. Yeah. I'll have 25 colors mixed.
Yeah.
Because I'm,
Yeah, well then you don't have to stop in the middle and go, wait, I need this. It's already there.
Yeah.
And if it's not there, it's going to be easier to create because there's so many options right there.
Yeah,
so
and within a green, I'll see 5 different greens in it, and other people only see one. I'm just are you bananas?
Yeah.
Look at that green. And they're like, you're fucking nuts. I'm like, okay, a little bit.
But you know what? I always felt like this about art. like buying art or something, or at least, or even being interested or an admirer of someone's art, if you could stare at it, I always think like, if I'd want that on my wall, and that translates to if I'd want to stare at it for a long time, then that piece of art is something that makes sense to me. And, I got to that point with my own art where I was able to just stare at it and be like, oh, wow, I created a lot more than I realized,
Being into your own art is very fun.
Oh, it's awesome.
There was a long time I was just like, bleh.
Yeah. Well, because
that's always a good feeling.
Yeah, you need that time to reflect and look at your own art. There's pieces that I did that I finished them and I was like, all right. And then a week or two later, I went back to it, or even a month, and I was like, oh my God, this is one of my favorite pieces of art,
I just painted a mural, and so the murals that I do are not my own designs. It's like I freelance for artists or companies that whatever. Yeah. But anyways.
We need to flip that.
Trust me. Well, I've done a few that are mine.
Yeah.
But I am making bomb-ass money doing this. I might actually be flown to Aruba in December to do a mural for 2 weeks.
All right.
So I'm like, hell yeah.
Yeah.
But I painted part of this mural, and they let me kind of do what I wanted, and it was like something silly and quick. I was like, this is fucking stupid. And I walked away for a couple hours, and I came back, and I was like, hot damn.
Yeah.
Those are some cute-ass flowers I just did. But yeah, it's like you need to breathe.
Yeah, exactly. When you're in it too much, and then it's
even just taking a picture of it and walking away, and then looking on your phone, you're like, oh shit.
Yeah, no, I do that. Like, so working on a piece. Before I go to bed, if I'm gonna walk away from it for a while, I'll take a photo of it, and then I'll sit in my bed for 10 minutes.
Hell yeah!
I'll be like, because it definitely looks different in a photo.
Yeah,
and sometimes not. The photo doesn't do it justice. But when you're creating it, you just like stuff pops out. Stuff, other stuff. You're like, oh, I need to work on this. It's interesting, and photography is a great mirror for your art. Yeah. Whether it's inspiration or creatively, like reflecting and different things like that.
Yeah. That's also why I kind of moved away from my photorealism, though. Yeah. Because even though people would be amazed when they found out it was a painting, people wouldn't sit with it much longer because we're used to things being photographic, so it doesn't hold that specialness of what it means to paint something. And that, when I realized that, I was like, oh, shit.
Well, because, if they don't understand the process that goes into that, too. Yeah. Because I've seen a lot of paintings that just look real and photographed. And I'm like...
Yeah, and you're like, well, that's boring. You could just look at a photo.
Yeah,
I mean, it's like, as a painter, I'm like, hot damn. Yeah, but, that's... I want to also give emotion, and I want to do sexy paint, as one of my professors said it.
Well, there's a painting, when I went to Australia... and we were in Sydney. They have some cool museums there. And there's this one painting, blew me away because, first of all, it was gigantic. Like, there's a photo of me where I'm standing next to it. I'm 6'1". I look small next to this thing. It was enormous.
Wow.
And it was basically like, it was done forever ago. It was basically a battle scene on a battlefield. So there was horses and swords and all that stuff. The detail that went into this was insane, and my thought was like, well, how the hell did he paint this? Because...
Good question.
This was all just in his head, this, stop, still moment?
Yeah.
Or did he just...
You're like, damn, I need to borrow your fucking horse again.
Yeah, let me paint your horse. Like, can you go out there and pretend like there's an explosion over there and just, throw your sword this way?
Yeah.
And, and then, stuff all over the ground, and I was like... I couldn't understand. I was like, how did he do this? And it just blew me away. And the fact that it was so big, too, I was like, this isn't... it must have taken him years to paint this or something, So I have to go back and, research the artist and stuff. I think I did right after, but I forget the details.
I want to see.
Yeah, I'll show you a photo. Yeah. It's pretty crazy.
Nice.
But, yeah, that's always... Yeah, that goes back to just learning the background and stuff, and you're just like, oh my God. But that one had an impact just looking at it.
Yeah.
The photographic ones, I'm kind of like, yeah, you're really talented, but, I don't know.
Yep.
Kind of like,
Yeah. I like paintings that you can touch, as you know very well about me.
Yeah. Gotta be able to touch
my friends hate that about me.
Yeah.
Because I'm like... always breaking fucking rules. When no one's looking in the gallery, I'll, like, put a pinky on it. I'm like, oh.
Well, you asked that about me, and I asked the same about you. Can I touch your painting? I was like, yeah, can I touch yours?
I just want to touch it.
Yeah.
It's so fun.
Well, because that's like... just the surface and the chunks of the paint.
Yeah.
It's
sexy
awesome.
paint, man.
Yeah.
I'm telling you.
So who, like, all right, here's like who are some of your influences? Like, who are some of the early ones, or who are you more current?
I love, like I said, I love Lucian Freud. Lucian Freud and Francis Bacon were kind of big for me in the beginning.
Yeah.
As my art history teacher in high school said, they're vulgar painters. I loved, having access to, museums. I always loved John Singer Sargent was one. Vermeer, Rubens, like, these are, like, very classic painters.
Yeah.
Now, like, Kehinde Wiley has been one of my favorite painters for, I don't know, the last 10-something years. I think he's fantastic. I kind of just...
I'm going to have to research some of these names.
Yeah, Kehinde Wiley, he did Obama's portrait.
Yeah. I like his stuff.
Yeah, I love his work. So, like, 10-something years ago, the Santa Monica Museum was printing art on beach towels.
Yeah.
I was like, this is the closest I'm ever going to get to owning one of these. So I bought, like, an 8-foot by 8-foot beach towel.
Nice,
and
nice.
I hung it in my living room. I was like, yes.
See, but his artwork is realistic.
It's realistic, but it has that kind of that surreal aspect of which I love.
Right.
But then, I'm actually super inspired by a lot of installation work, like kind of bringing the outdoors indoors is always really basically just creating an experience, like experiential art. I love whimsical art, like Jonas Wood is one of my favorite. He kind of does like flatter pieces that are like still lifes and stuff like that. I mean, there's a lot of, it's hard to pinpoint like a favorite artist.
Well, no, I don't think there should be. I doubt there's one. I don't have one. I have so many favorites.
I have so many artists that I get super stoked on. There's an artist that I actually recently discovered. I think his name is Corey Lamb on Instagram, and I'm obsessed with his stuff. Yeah. So that's also like, I'm trying to embrace Instagram more.
Yeah.
But, I've discovered some...
What, self-promotion? You?
I know. But I've discovered some artists that I really love on there.
It's funny because I'll come across somebody and I'll be like, this is amazing. And then as I go back over it over the next few months, I'll be like, yeah, it's all right. Maybe but then there's other people I find that I'm just like, that I'm stuck with. Like, I really love their stuff.
For me to follow an artist on Instagram, I am like a stalker. Like, I will go to the fucking beginning.
Yeah.
Like, I scroll, and if I don't like 90% of yours, I'm like, nah, I'm good.
Yeah. Well, because there is a lot of artists like that too that create like one or two that are amazing.
Yeah, I want to see like I want shit that's going to entertain me for like a month.
Yeah. I mean, because there's like with music, a lot of times a band's first album is their best, and they never recreate that.
And it's gobbledygook after.
Yeah, because they put their whole life into that first album. Yeah. And then some people, they're just getting cooking, and that first album was a learning experience, and then boom, their second album is like Oasis. Like, their first album is great, but the second album was just like the end all, like, be all with all the hits. And but yeah, so it's the same thing with artists too. I think like some artists, like, their first group of paintings are their most amazing, but then they just don't know how to grow or translate after that.
Also, like, I really love Patrick Martinez. He also is somebody I really love. He was in Beyond the Streets. I actually, right now he's doing a lot of stuff where he will create sculptures of kind of sheet cakes, and he'll paint, people on it, like whether, brown people, black people, like whether they be somebody who runs like a local market or somebody who was like shot by the cops or and but he does these kind of like really gorgeous, well painted portraits, kind of loosely, and it's just that mix of sculpture and painting is gorgeous. And he did a series of work that would be kind of like if you took the slice out of a wall of a bodega that's been painted over a bunch of times and mixes neon. But I saw his work maybe 10 years ago, and I went to a show, a little space on, I think it was Fairfax, and he had neon signs. You know, the back of a neon sign is just black, and then they have the neon around it. And he did like really, really beautiful, loose, but kind of realistic paintings of, you know, like a 40-ounce or like malt liquor with neon around it. And he really inspired me because it was that mix of classic painting techniques of contemporary things on a non-classic background, like of a neon. And that mix of all those things is like so fucking sexy to me, of just being able to, you know, have that the techniques but modernizing it. Like that's another important thing to me, is like I want to be able to use classic techniques in a modern way and make it exciting again, like mix the old and the new and the subject matter and the way you do it. So he's a huge influence of mine for sure.
All right.
Yeah,
I'll have to look that up. I don't think I knew his stuff.
And he's a dope dude. He's so incredibly nice. I once emailed him and told him I had a crush on him, like 15 years ago. And then when I had to work with him again, I was like, hey, do you remember that time, like forever ago, I might have sent you like a love letter? And he was like, oh yes, you.
That'd be great if he had it like framed in his house or something.
Yeah, I can only wish.
Yeah, that'd be hilarious. So what do you think about today's current art scene?
I think it's becoming very exciting again. I think that there was a period of time where it was the more eccentric and weird you are, who you knew. Basically, you're selling yourself as like a caricature as opposed to anything else. Yeah. But I think that it's becoming a lot more interesting. I think that, you know, the classic gallery is kind of going out, and I think it's opening up more opportunities for people to create their own spaces. And the line between classic fine art, like, oh, I'm in a gallery, fine art gallery, and maybe what's seen as more lowbrow art, is that line is going away. And also, it seems like, you know, from doing stuff like Beyond the Streets and all that stuff, there's this, and doing shows with Think Tank Gallery and the sponsorships, it's like, you know, skateboarding industry and... why did I forget every word I knew in English? But it'd be like skateboarding and like booze and music, and everything seems to be like crossing over with each other. And I think it's creating more interesting stuff and more opportunities and a bigger discussion. And it's bringing art to people who typically wouldn't know about art, and vice versa. It's just, I think it's a very cool, and I think it's very much partially a Los Angeles thing. I think that this is kind of the perfect breeding ground for that. But I think it's great.
Los Angeles does have like just the most random mix of people. Yeah, and it's that's good. That helps.
Yeah, and it definitely is. I think in the last year or so has kind of had this growth spurt, which I'm proud to be a part of and be involved with.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I've seen you do a lot of different things.
I'm all over the place.
Yeah, you are. Well, and that's where I appreciate you taking the time to do this, because it's like
anything for you.
Get in deep. Oh, thank you. So before we get to promotions and stuff like that,
oh God,
I have a little quiz.
I'm scared.
No, you should be. Let me see, because I have to remember to do this right. Okay. Let's see.
Nice glasses, by the way.
Thank you. So I'm just going to ask you a few questions.
Oh my God, I feel like I'm at the doctor's office.
Oh, yeah. People have said I do have a doctor's signature. Yes. Okay, so what is your favorite animal?
Fox.
Fox. Wow, that was fast.
Arctic fox, specifically.
All right.
Don't worry about it.
All right. I'll put that there anyway. And then give me 3 adjectives to describe an Arctic fox.
Fluffy.
What? Fluffy? Okay. That's good.
Cunning.
Okay.
Mercurial.
Okay. Okay. What's your favorite piece of clothing? It could be like a t-shirt, a jacket, a pair of boots, like just whatever.
A jacket I stole from my dad. It's of the Maui Stingrays, which was a minor league baseball team in Maui for only like a few years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I'm never giving it back.
Nice. That's pretty incredible, too. Maui baseball team. Now give me 3 adjectives to describe that jacket.
Badass.
Okay.
Nostalgic. Gangster.
Wow. If you only knew.
Oh, God, I'm scared.
No, this is great. And now your favorite body of water. So it can be like a lake somewhere, an ocean, a river, you know. Like
God, you're asking someone who painted water forever.
Oh, then this is a good one.
Shit.
Yeah.
My favorite body of water. God damn. Oh, man. I'm really... You know what? Okay.
Just one. There could be many, but just pick one for this.
You know what? I'm going to say a classic mid-century modern LA pool.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Very David Hockney. Makes me feel very happy.
Okay, so now give me 3 adjectives to describe a classic LA pool.
Crisp.
Okay.
Oh, God. I feel I'm regretting everything in
No,
life.
this is great.
So crisp. I'm like English. Exciting.
Okay. And?
I want to say nostalgic again, but that's stupid. I can't say that again.
I mean, you could.
What's another word for nostalgic? Where's my inner thesaurus? Comforting.
Okay. Okay, you ready for this?
Oh, God. Is this like a Mad Libs?
No, I saw, I think it was Whitney Cummings did it to Jimmy Kimmel, I think.
Oh, fun.
Or something. And I was like, I got to add this in because this is awesome. And it's funny because when I was in Florida recently for business, there's this woman, she's really eccentric and super cool, and she has a crazy story, and she did this thing at dinner with all of us that was even deeper than this, and I need to like email her and be like, will you give me the whole like forest
what is
thing
the
again?
whole spiel?
Yeah. So basically your favorite animal, that's how you perceive yourself.
Ooh.
So you perceive yourself as an Arctic fox, and you perceive yourself as fluffy, cunning, and mercurial.
That's very accurate, actually.
Yeah, see? You know yourself well. And then the favorite piece of clothing, the jacket stolen from your dad or the Maui Stingrays, that's how the way others see you. So others see you as badass, nostalgic, and gangster. I could see that.
Yeah.
You got the tattoos.
I mean, I have like a lot of tattoos.
Yeah, the Aerosmith shirt, that's very nostalgic. Yeah. And you're definitely badass. So
Thank you.
Favorite body of water, LA Classic Pool. This is... Wait a minute. Where is it? Oh, I know what this is. This is...
Oh, God.
This is how you view sex. So you view sex as crisp, exciting, and comforting. That's actually pretty good.
That's actually very lovely.
Yeah, that's actually really good.
I would like to think I have crisp sex.
Yeah, well, yeah. Well, and it's exciting and comforting.
That's nice.
Yeah, that's really nice. Yeah, that's really
lovely.
Heartfelt. That's really heartfelt.
That's really funny.
So, this has been amazing, and this has been
thanks for having me.
So in depth. So last thing, and I know this is your worst aspect, your self promotion. Like where can people find your art? Do you have any upcoming shows? Do you have a website? What's your Instagram? What's your Twitter? Give it all.
Okay. Actually tonight.
Yes.
Well, by the time this comes out, it's gonna be passing. I'm doing live painting. Let me see. Oh, I have something very cool coming up. In like right before Thanksgiving for the Santa Monica Pier, I am painting a bunch of sculptures for their winter wonderland, whatever. So they have an artist residency with artist Pip and Pop, who I fucking love. They're fantastic. And I'm painting these sculptures to kind of mimic and mirror what their style is. So I'm going to have about 17 things up there. Yeah. It's going to be from like Thanksgiving to January 6th. So that's a very exciting thing. Otherwise, I don't really have many shows planned coming up right now. I have to see what's going on.
So if somebody's listening, where can they find your artwork?
So
where can they buy your artwork?
So Instagram. I'm sorry. I need to get better about like clicking my teeth when I talk about art.
You need a manager that kicks your ass all the time.
God, her name is Casey Mixter.
Good old Casey.
Good old Casey. So probably my Instagram is the best because that's where I post everything that I do, even like events because I do a lot of event like production and stuff like that for art shows. So it would be at Francesca _Quintano, which is FRANCESCA _QUINTANO. There's a link to my website there.
Nice.
Yeah, it's probably the best. That's where I post everything. So,
all right.
And that's also typically, where I get like hit up for art actually, or I just get random emails.
Yeah.
I feel like I have a lot going on right now, but I can't remember. I mean, I just like do a lot of murals and I'm painting all the time and it's nonstop. So
art life.
Yeah. So art life, man. Been designing beer cans for a new brewery.
Nice.
That's a thing.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right, good. All right. Well, again, thank you so much for being here and being a part of episode number 2
of the
What's This About podcast.
Thanks for getting me to actually talk about myself.
Yes.
Not at a bar when people don't care.
Yes. And if you haven't seen Francesca's artwork, please go find it. It's amazing. She's always been a huge inspiration and a teacher to me, and I'm always eternally grateful.
I love you.
Love you too. And this has been great. So, and we'll do this again sometime too.
Hell yeah.
Because you're forever evolving and doing different things. So we always need to know about these things. And people need to know about you and your art. Yes. Not just insecure white girls in Venice.
That was only for like a year. I promise.
Yes. Now you're on the level. All right. Well, thank you. And again, this is Andy White with the What's This About podcast. Our special guest, Francesca Quintano. Go find her art. Buy it all now. Take care.
Bye.